All right, Jem, I'm excited about this conversation, and I want to launch in with getting into your book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men: Effective Personal and Professional Communication Skills. As somebody who hours ago had a coaching session digging into the communication with my wife, also a small rupture within my professional team within the last couple weeks, rooted in a communication rub. I'm particularly interested in this conversation, and I suppose my opening broad stroke question would be, can you define for us what conscious communication is to you, and why is this such an essential and important topic for you to be writing about, speaking about, coaching about right now?
Yeah, sure. I would love to. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show, dude. I've been really looking forward to this. You look at your calendar and you have all these appointments coming up, and I do lots of podcasts. But this one's been one of those ones I just had a feeling. I'm like, I'm really looking forward to chatting with this dude. So thanks for having
Thank
me
you.
on your show. Conscious communication definition, if we simplify it, to be more conscious of anything is to just be simply more aware of it. The more conscious you are of something, the more aware of it you are. So the idea is that we're more aware of the communication itself, which means being more aware of yourself in the communication, the other person or people that you're speaking with, to be aware of the higher purpose of the communication. Why are we in this conversation? How is this communication serving the greater good? So that's
Mm.
the conscious part of it, and which obviously we can go into a lot of detail on in terms of human behavior and self-awareness and ego and spirit and all the and masculine and feminine energy styles and the whole thing. Communication, which I love, is, I mean, if you take it all the way back to the original meaning of the word. So the Latin noun for communication is communicatio, which means a sharing, not a telling, a sharing. I love that. And the verb communicare means to make common. So for communication to be successful, we have to come to some sort of understanding, which doesn't mean we necessarily always need to agree, but that we have some greater understanding of each other through communication. And I'm passionate about communication, just like you said, John. So many times when we come unstuck in situations, us humans in our interactions, it's because of miscommunication. So often, and after more than 10,000 hours of coaching, it just became a really common theme for me, whether it was executive leaders that I'm coaching or couples or whoever. It was just a common theme. People were like, yeah, man, I'm really struggling with this particular aspect. And when we dug really deep into it, it was communication, either communication with themselves in terms of the quality of their internal dialogue and limiting beliefs, or then the miscommunication with people around them. And its communication is so fundamentally important. I mean, it underpins our ability to be successful in every aspect of life. Whether that's manifesting an idea into reality. If you can't communicate your amazing visionary idea, it's never going to materialize. Or whether it's, us harnessing the power of the diversity of thinking to really expand the bandwidth of creative solution problem solving ability, right? So when we're looking at a big problem and we're trying to come up with a solution for it, if we're just a group of, the same demographic, right? Single, just say, because it's you and me talking right now. But if it was just you and me, single, not single, white middle class males sitting around a table trying to solve a problem, the bandwidth for possible solutions is very narrow. So we need different people, different backgrounds, different cultures, religions, ideas, politics, beliefs, and everything, right? Because then we've got a really broad range of, oh my, wow, I would never have thought of that, right? So this is harnessing the power of diversity, but you can only do that if you can communicate, right? And to be able to communicate, we need to loosen our grip on the way we think things should be, right? I'm going to loosen my grip. I'm going to lean into this conversation and seek to understand you. And if you say something that is controversial to me, I'm going to lean even more in. I don't want to get defensive and start queuing up to jump in and say, no, you're wrong. If you say something that really shocks me, I'm like, wow, where are you coming from? I want to know now. This is communication. Um, anyway, you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it.
I want to use a personal challenge that I have experienced as the root of this question.
Mm,
And you would think that over time, so I'm 49, I have a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I've studied communication in various ways for years. And I would think that I would just get better and better and better at this over time, less and less triggered. And and that might be true. But what also is happening simultaneously is I'm maybe developing more and more stronger opinions about how communication is supposed to go. And I have now locked into how it's supposed to be. And I'm more frustrated now than maybe I'd ever been in my life
mm,
with communication. And I
yeah.
feel like my temper like I'm quick to fire. I'm quick to be fiery because I'm
Mm,
like, I've studied communication. This is how it's supposed to go. And if it's not going this way, it's wrong.
yeah.
Have you seen that with people who've been in it for a while, where instead of it maybe becoming easier, it becomes more difficult?
Yeah. And the nature of the relationship as well um, makes us more reactionary because of our sense of identity within that. So I've noticed that the parent child relationship is especially tricky to navigate in terms of, or can be, in terms of communication, because such a strong sense of identity is enmeshed in these little people because they're half me, right? And it's my responsibility to hopefully raise them in a way that they can flourish in life. And they're my child, and that's all identity, i.e., ego. Right? You are my son or my daughter, and so when they behave in ways or communicate in ways that go against our core values, we are super triggered, like at the drop of a hat. And so then, also then with your spouse, whether it's wife or husband or partner, similarly, because you are so enmeshed in that relationship, and that relationship is a very close extension of your identity, again, we get very triggered. So our ego, which is our sense of who we think we are, is necessarily defensive. I mean, it's a defense mechanism. It evolved with us as a species to keep us safe. So it's fueled by fear, which is coming straight from the amygdala before we have any front brain logic making or reason making of a situation. We're triggered immediately by the reptilian part of the brain. And quite often it's a fear trigger to keep us safe. That's where the ego gets its fuel. So you're in a situation and someone says something that threatens your sense of identity, which is the way you think things should be and your core values and your politic and your religion, threatens your sense of identity, and before you know what's happening, you're triggered, man. You're like, no. So it takes a lot of work and daily practice, meditation for me, mindfulness meditation practice, to train yourself to be able to catch yourself and pause, not react, and take a breath. Or if you get triggered quicker than you can catch, to very quickly be aware that you've been triggered and have some techniques to breathe, let it go, slow down, lean in, etc. So yes, long answer to your question, John, but yes, it's very normal for that to happen for us, and especially as we get older, we can have these ideas on the way we think things should be, and so when you care about someone like your children, you really want them to see it the way you see it because you care. If it was someone you didn't really know in a bar somewhere who was a bit drunk and they said something contrary to the way you think, you'd be like, oh, whatever, mate, whatever. But the closer they are to you, the more you're like, no. Yeah.
What does the training look like for you? What is the practice? And yeah, what are you practicing? Is it an affirmation?
Yeah. So combination. So the morning, first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is get up to help me not be too sleepy when I meditate. I get up and I go to the kitchen and I make my athletic greens. It's a supplement. Oh, you might have heard of AG. Anyway, so I go and have my supplement. Then I go back into my room and sit up and meditate for 20 to 30 minutes, specifically mindfulness meditation. So I'm not doing mantra or transcendental meditation. There's various different forms, and mindfulness meditation is really simply an observation of the present moment. And you can observe your breath, you can observe your any physical sensations or sounds that you can hear. You can observe your thoughts. It's crazy to think that your thoughts just stop. They don't. They keep going, but you can come to a place of observation of your thoughts. So, meditation. Then at the end of my shower, full blast cold for 30 to 60 seconds, which I do not enjoy, but the dopamine levels go up. When the dopamine levels go up, that's when I'm doing my affirmations, because when dopamine levels are heightened, the neural pathways that are forming when we say something out loud form a lot more effectively. So I'm doing my affirmations when the dopamine's high when I get out of the shower. And part of my affirmation is I am open minded.
Mm.
So I'm brainwashing myself to believe that I'm open minded. And what happens with affirmations is after time, if you've done them well, you actually start to believe your own hype. You consciously brainwash yourself, right? So that's part of what I do. Another practice, another awesome practice that has become habitual for me over the last 10 years is pausing often. So throughout the day, I pause. I'd show you. I don't know if these podcasts go visual, but for those of you who are just
Mhm. It will be
listening
on
to the
YouTube. Yeah.
podcast, yeah. So behind me on my studio door is a big sign saying pause. On my monitor in front of me, a sign that says pause. So it reminds me in these moments to pause and take a breath. And then the other thing that I've found useful is, and this is a practice in regards to open mindedness and getting better at not letting our triggers drive our behaviors. When you're scrolling through social media and you see something that triggers you and you notice you have an opinion immediately, you see something and straight away you've got an opinion. Nah, that's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. When you notice yourself have an opinion immediately, stop scrolling, put your phone down, sit there, take a breath, and consider alternative perspectives. Just consider them. I'm not saying you have to change your mind, you know, but just consider alternative perspectives. Now, this is a practice, it's a discipline, but what you're doing is training yourself to loosen your grip on the way you think things should be, right? And over time, you become um, less defensive of your ideology and more curious, more open minded, easier to get along with. Yeah.
Jem, do you experience shame yourself when you teach this, you coach on this, you've done it for years, you have a practice, and then you don't do it? And I'm making an assumption that happens. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But if you do slip, do you experience shame at this point of the game for yourself?
No, not anymore, man. I lived under a blanket of shame for a long time, and it was a secret shame because I was so ashamed I couldn't tell anyone. My anxieties in a previous chapter of my life, in my past marriage, which is now more than a decade ago. But for a long time, my anxieties I pushed them all into one place, which was sexual intimacy, and I developed a proper anxiety around sex. So I was sexually dysfunctional in my marriage for years, um, which was horrible, and I was so ashamed. I didn't tell anyone, man. I thought I was the only guy. I would look at every other guy and just presume that everyone had it all together, and that was just natural. This is just natural. It's what you do. And all I wanted to do was to be a man for my woman and to take her in that way and to give her pleasure and to give her ecstasy in that way. And it just got worse and worse and worse. It was really full on. And I lived under this blanket of shame for many years. So I'm very familiar with shame. I know it really well. But over the last 10 years of a radical self acceptance practice, which is part of the daily affirmations and self love, I'm really happy to say I don't feel shame anymore, even when I slip up. So, um, for example, one of my sons does something, and I'm triggered in the moment, and I lose my temper. And then after catching myself, which happens a lot quicker now, and breathing and moving through it and coming back to a place of equanimity, I feel no shame. I just feel love. I'm like, Jem, you're a human being. I'm glad I'm still human. I don't want to be a monk sitting in a cave somewhere enlightened. I don't. I'm very happy being me, which is human and feeling everything. But there's certainly no shame anymore, which is a relief.
In your years of serving, again, speaking, coaching, is there a common theme amongst men? And if you could even identify it to fathers, our market, family men with businesses, uh,
Mm.
is there a common theme that trips people up when it comes to conscious communication? The one thing that might show up more often than others?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big theme and we could dissect it in many different ways. But I think because we were raised in a patriarchal structure, which is a structure of dominance, and we get taught that the only way to succeed or to survive, let alone thrive, is through this dominance structure. So you need to win. You need to win at sport. You need to win in the corporate world. You need to beat that person for the promotion. You need to earn more money than the next guy. You certainly can't show any vulnerability, because vulnerability is a weakness and you'll get chewed up and spat out. That's the structure that we've been brought up in. My dad used to say to me, toughen up, harden up, suck it up, man up. Don't cry like a girl, he used to say to me, which I understand where it came from. He was World War II baby, and it was tough in Leeds in England. They were living in poverty, and his dad came back from the war with bullets in him, and there was no time to sit around and be sensitive and meditate. you know, it was like, dude, get the fuck up and go and earn some money and put some food on the table. Don't cry now. You need to. So I understand where those generations of culture came from, but we're not in that time now, And I think that humanity needs to be evolving in expanded levels of consciousness. I really believe that for us to survive. Otherwise, we're going to screw it all up. We're on the brink of that. And so I was a very sensitive boy, really sensitive, very emotional, and um, that was not allowed, you know. And I thought I was alone, but I'm not. I speak to a lot of guys of my age, my generation, who, given half a chance, want to be able to peel back the layers of this tough exterior, and they want to be able to express their emotions. They just didn't think that that was okay. But we're starting to know that that is okay, to sit around in a men's circle and talk about how you're actually feeling.
Do you think it's okay to say to a child, hey, feel all those feelings all the way through and then suck it up and be a man? Is there a yes and there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't say to my boys and then suck it up and be a man. I have always said to my boys, um, feel whatever you're feeling and let's talk about it. So you've got
Mhm.
some way of expressing how you're feeling, and a sense of being able to communicate it, so it's not getting bottled up. So my boys are young men now, 20 and 18. My boys have always felt safe to talk with me about anything. There's sometimes when my boys have come to me and said, "Oh, Dad, I need to tell you something," and they tell me, and I'm like, "Oh, geez, I wish you hadn't told me." I would have been better off not knowing that. But anyway, but I'm glad that you feel that you can tell me anything. That's
Yeah.
important. And then, so this is the "and" part that you were talking about. And then now, get up and get out there and take some action and make some shit happen.
Yeah, it's
100%.
some version of that, right? I
Yeah.
want that with my kids too. Yes, process this. Yes, get it out. I don't want you shoving it down and like I don't want that. And there's a moment when we need to move on. I remember when I had a bad breakup, maybe in my late 20s, early 30s, and I was in a funk, and there was a buddy that came to me at one point, and he's like, "Hey, man, I get it. It was hard. You had to experience the funk. It's time to move on now."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll never
yeah,
forget the conversation. It was great. And I
yeah,
think that we need that person that can hold space or give room for a particular period of time, whether that's parent to child, brother to brother, or with your
yeah,
spouse, and then at some point say, all right, now we're gonna start walking again. Let's put the
yeah,
shoes
yeah,
back on and we're gonna
yeah.
take one step at a time.
100%. My beautiful woman Talia puts it like this. She says it's okay to get off the train at that emotional station, but just don't unpack your bags.
Yeah,
Right? Just
that's
get ready to get on
great.
the next
I
train and
love
move
that.
on, you know?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. Take us into the pause piece. Where did you come up with? Where did you first learn that? And and take me into maybe some practical examples of how that shows up and how it serves you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'm glad you asked about this. This habit, if you can form this into a habit, is one of those ones that seems way too small and simple to be powerful, but it's just deceptively powerful. It's quite an incredible recalibration back to your place of equanimity throughout the day. So I was at the Global Mindful Leader Forum in Sydney, Australia, in 2014, and one of the keynote speakers was a meditation teacher from the States, and he got up on stage, and the whole auditorium just went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. I can't even remember his name. And he was a small man, in physically small man, but he emanated this big, beautiful Dalai Lama like energy. And he walked onto the stage. Anyway, some when you've heard something before, it just wasn't the right time for whatever reason, you didn't adopt it. But
Yep.
then sometimes you hear something and it's just the right time in your life to hear that thing and it lands and you go and you're changed in that moment. And he said two things to me that stuck and I adopted. One was he was talking about meditation. One was he said, know the work, as in no meditation, but he said, do the work. And I felt called out. I was like, oh man, that's so true. Here am I prescribing mindfulness meditation to my clients and I don't have a daily practice. I was like, Jem, you got to have some integrity here, mate. So that's when I was determined to create a habit of a daily practice of meditation. And then the second thing he said was pause often. Just two words. I went, what does he mean by that? You know, and I just took it literally. I just thought, pause often. So then I wanted to go and create a habit of this. And this was before James Clear, his book called Atomic Habits. This was way before that book came out. I used to call it habit association. He calls it habit stacking. So you take the new habit you want to create and you stack it with an existing habit. So I just got a little sticky note and say, for example, on my coffee machine. So I have a habit of making my coffee every morning, right? So on the coffee machine, I just stuck a little note saying pause. So every morning I'd go to make my coffee. And then as I got to the container that has the beans in it, just conveniently I'd open the lid of the container and pause. So the beautiful aroma of the coffee came to my nose. And I would just do a 3 to 5 second mindfulness exercise. So just take a breath and for 3 to 5 seconds, just notice what you can notice: the smell of the coffee, your heart rate, your breathing, and then continue. And so I had the coffee machine, I had it on the top of my laptop. This was, leading up and coming through into COVID as well. And I would just have this little thing around. So then what happens is that the habit becomes associated with the existing habit. So I don't have a sticky note on my coffee machine anymore, but habitually every time I open my beans, I pause. And this little 3 to 5 second pause becomes a micro recalibration back to your place of equanimity, which is your
Mm.
calm center. So, to give you a practical example, I'm running late for a meeting and it's a Zoom meeting and I'm running late to my laptop and I hate running late. It gets me. I'm like, really don't like being late. So, I'm racing to my laptop. And just before I open my laptop to race into this meeting, I pause, take a breath, and then I go into the meeting. Now, I'm only 3 seconds later than I was going to be. But instead of turning up to the meeting going, hey, everyone, I'm sorry I'm late, blah, 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 I got stuck in traffic and really, really sorry, like that energy, I'm turning up into the meeting like this. Hi, everyone. Please forgive me for being late.
Mm.
And I'm present and I'm there with them. So it's game changing, man, because you think about it, John, most of us wake up in the morning, you're getting ready, you're doing your thing, you're getting the kids ready for school, packing lunches and whatever. And I've been single parenting for more than 10 years now, right? And you're getting uniforms ready and you're running around and then you're getting ready for work and then you're off to your client and then blah, 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 blah. And we don't stop, you know, and then you go eat your lunch and you eat your lunch a little bit too quickly because you've got to get back to that next thing and you come home and then you get the kids and they're doing homework and you cook the dinner and you get them to bed and then you do the dishes and then you fall on the couch in front of Netflix with a glass of wine if you're lucky and you fall asleep and you go, oh my God. And then you get up the next day and you do it all again.
Yeah.
Right? So just inserting these little 3 to 5 second pauses throughout the day, game changing.
You remind me of a very good friend of mine who I was on the phone with just before we started this interview. And I mistakenly called him, which is obviously no mistake. It was a perfect accidental call.
Yeah.
Uh, and he is a guy who years ago I was at a fundraising event for a charity that we started called Front Row Foundation,
Uh-huh.
and he walked up to me in the middle of what was a very hectic night, running around checking on this, making sure this is great. And we had 400 people in the room. This is probably back in 2007 or 2008. And he just walks up and he says, "Hey man, just pause for a minute and look
Mm,
around and
mm,
just appreciate this." And I'll
yeah.
never forget where I was standing. I'll never forget that comment. And
Yeah.
I have now done that to other people in
Yeah.
these moments of their lives where I see them hustling, their weddings. I'll walk up to somebody at their wedding and I'll get like 10 seconds with them. I'll just give them a hug and I'm like, "Hey, just pause and look around for a second.
Yeah.
All these people are here celebrating you. Soak this in for a minute, like just
Yeah.
look at this. Look at the smiles, look at the energy, look at the joy all in your honor."
Yeah.
And it's that one guy who says something to you. It took him 10 seconds to say it, and it's changed how I have operated in many, many moments. Now, I
Yeah.
would like to have better reminders for this, and I'll consider today a great reminder also, Jem.
Mm.
And I'm thinking about all the places I can put a little pause symbol. Maybe I'll tattoo it on my wrist, but I need a little
Yeah.
pause symbol to
Yeah.
remind me of that stopping point. And when
Yeah.
I do it, it feels good. And I can come up with, and everybody listening could come up with countless examples in their lives, I'm sure, of where a pause helps. I think about it, how a pause helps if you're dancing with somebody. It's knowing when to stop. I think about music
Mm.
and knowing when to like take a breath, take a beat. It's a great
Mm.
speech. It's like there's so many places where the pause is beautifully positioned to accentuate something, to bring something to life. That's
Mm.
what it is. It's like I remember having the realization that stillness is a move. That
Yeah.
was, as I remember, stillness is a move because I always wanted to be in motion. I always wanted to be doing something.
Mm. Yeah. I love that. I love that stillness and, this beautiful yin yang of everything. And we don't have day without night. We wouldn't know what day is without night. And we don't know what dance and movement and velocity is without stillness. That
Yeah.
they need each other. And also, just this is a bit of a tangent on the stillness thing, but it comes from the pause. Stillness, when you're present in stillness, is a wonderful masculine tool and ability, especially in relationship with feminine. So if your spouse is in their feminine, whether it's a male or a female, doesn't matter. But if your spouse is in their feminine and you really want to charge that polarity, that sexual attraction, and that beautiful um, symbiotic nature of the relationship, you go really still, but very present, not switching off, not glazing over, really being present for her and still while she's moving and dancing in her emotional, beautiful roller
Mm,
coaster. And it's quite stunning. It's a really stunning experience, especially if both of you are conscious
oof,
as to what's going on.
wow. Sounds a lot easier to say than do.
It's a practice, man. It's a practice. It's a practice.
Yeah,
But
for
talk
sure.
about it and do it because the reason that we get sucked into the kinetic energy is because of our ego and we want to defend. And if we feel that we're attacked, and we get sucked into the kinetic emotional energy, and we're going, yeah, but no, or we want the stillness, but we don't know how to be present in stillness. So we say, I'm just going to give you some space, and we walk off outside to go and
Mm,
do something to get us our peace and quiet. I need some peace and quiet, right? But when you train yourself to let go of having anything to defend and hold the space for her and lean in still, get curious and calm yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Imagine there's energy going through your crown chakra, down through your body and down through the soles of your feet and down into the earth. And you are rooted like a big, beautiful oak tree. and you just stand there still and then lean in for her. It's really quite a remarkable practice. And if you're looking for ways to practice it together, even you can just do this: stand together. It's an exercise that you've both agreed to do, right? You stand in front of each other, facing each other. Ask her to put on some music of her choice, music that she likes to move to or dance to. Now, the exercise is you just stand there looking at each other. You stand still, don't move. Don't sway into the music, just stand still like a mountain. And she stands in front of you and just moves however she feels. And you just hold space for her and allow her to move. Dude, it's like you feel the energy. It's like, oh my God, I
Mm,
want to take you to bed right now.
yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. On this topic of body movement, and what we say with our body, I'm curious as to how much of what we communicate is body language and how much is in our words. How much of the conscious communication is actually choosing conscious words versus being conscious of how our body is interacting with the moment.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And as we've become more physically detached from each other and more, communicating more through virtual spaces and then phones and then deteriorating down to just text, whether it's WhatsApp or text or whatever, or email, this has become more and more of a problem because so much of our communication is through body. And when I say body, even more when you're in the same room as each other, there's so much going on that we're not aware of. Not even just smell, because you can smell someone's state as well, but actual physical transference of particles is communication as well. I mean, I never knew this, but the reason that when women are living together and they end up getting into cycle with each other,
Yeah.
because the actual the cycle cocktail of actual physical cells that comes out of their bodies and goes through the air and lands on the other one, and they adopt it and they get into sync with each other. It's a physical transference of stuff.
Wow.
It's not just psychological or emotional, it's physical. So when we're in the same room as each other, we're communicating in a myriad of ways that we're not even aware of. So it is vitally important. And if so how do we use that knowledge? If there's ever a piece of communication that you think should be had and you're worried about it might be misconstrued or go the wrong way, if you can get into the same physical space as that person, I know that's the most confrontational, but if you can get into the same physical space, that's your best chance of the
What do you mean
communication
the
being
same
successful.
physical space?
Not Zoom, like in the
Oh, I
same
see.
room,
Yeah, I got it.
in the same room, if you can.
Yeah.
If you can't, then a Zoom or a virtual where you can actually see each other and hear each other is the next best thing. If you can't do that, they've got to be able to hear your voice, because tonality is so important. I mean, if you've got a piece of communication that you want to have and you think it might possibly be misconstrued, don't text it or email it. 100% it'll be taken the wrong way, you know.
What is your take on repair? So let's say that you were unconscious, you really
Mm,
jacked stuff up.
mm.
What's your process for coming back into equanimity with your partner, with your kids, with your coworkers, whomever?
The first step, I think, and the most important step is complete acceptance of what happened. It should have happened, apparently, because it did. You might go, yeah, but no, it was really dysfunctional, man. I lost my temper and I this and that, and I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, but you did, right? If you notice yourself wishing that something hadn't have happened, that I shouldn't have done that, and you're beating yourself up for it, the first step is to, or the other person, she shouldn't have spoken to me like that, or she shouldn't have done this, or the first step is to come back to reality. The reason you're in suffering is because your expectations of what should have happened and reality of what actually happened, there's a gap there. And that's where the suffering happens. So you need to recalibrate back to reality and go, well, apparently she should have done that because she did. Okay. All right. And apparently I should have been triggered and reacted the way I did because I did. Not that it was functional and not that it's how I hope to be in the future. Hopefully I learn from that and I improve. Of course, right? We're evolving and growing, hopefully. but I'm not going to sit here wasting any energy going, no, that shouldn't have happened. Full
Mm,
acceptance. And forgiveness is a funny word because forgiveness for what? For being human? Anyone is only acting, behaving in any given moment, given the resources available to them or not in that moment. They don't know how to be anything else other than themselves in that moment. So forgiveness to me is a bit of a funny word because it kind of feels like it's putting you above someone, going, I forgive you. It's like, no, 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 I don't forgive you for what? Being human? Forgive myself for what? Being human? No, acceptance, pure acceptance. And within that, you can then come to unconditional love. Do you know what? I love myself regardless of whatever I've done in the past. And I will keep showing up trying to improve. And that's okay. That's human. So I think that's a really important step to repair.
I'm gonna take a I'm gonna take a turn here, and maybe this is in alignment with what we're already talking about, and maybe it's a total tangent, but something that came up with my buddy that I was mentioning earlier, that I had a
Mm,
conversation with him that taught me to pause. We also talked about the fact that he and I both lost a very, very good friend a month ago,
mm,
suddenly, um, and that we've been talking over the last 4 weeks about our emotional journey through this grieving process.
mm,
And one of the things that I said to him was that when I left this service, weeks ago, I had a absolute commitment to being a better human. My friend
mm,
who passed was such a legendary guy. His name was John Rulin. Many people listening to this will know his name. And I loved John so deeply. We've known each other for more than 2 decades. I was a
mm,
groomsman in his wedding, our families vacationed together. We were brothers. We talked all the time. And man, I went through a lot of emotions, but the one that was the most profound during his funeral was just this sense of like how great of a human he was,
mm,
and how my spirit is still communing with his spirit. I still feel very connected to him spiritually.
mm,
And he lived such a dedicated, devoted, integrous life in so many ways. I could spend the next 30 minutes just talking about how great he is.
mm,
But the reason I want to, and I love talking about John, and I love honoring his life, and I love letting people know who he was. And one thing that happened in the last couple of weeks that I wanted to bring to you that might help other men grieving in whatever it is that they've lost is
mm,
that not only did I swing the pendulum what feels like to the opposite side of like be the nicest person in the world to everybody you meet, but it's like I've
mm,
actually found myself being even more short-tempered, more quick to be fiery, and I'm
mm,
actually surprised by that when it happens sometimes. And
mm,
I can start to understand a little bit why, but maybe you could talk to me a little bit about your experience with grief, or how grief plays into conscious communication, because and I don't want to overtalk the point before I just hand it off to you and let you answer this question, but just make sure I'm setting it up properly to explain the intent behind it. Is like, I guess sometimes I'm unconscious in my communication because of the weight I'm carrying, or the
mm,
emotional toll that I'm experiencing somehow.
mm,
And I would think I would come out more sensitive and more caring as a result of that, but sometimes it comes out the opposite. Like I just don't have anything available for any other person, and it comes out as angry, like you're in my way. This
yeah,
thing, this thought, this react, it's in my way, and
yeah,
I need ease, I need healing, and fuck you for standing in my way.
yeah. Yeah, wow. And you know what, John? I think that over time, um, you will become even more kind than you were before over time. But this is recent, yeah, like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. So, and it was a shock. It was instant. It was out of the blue, right?
yeah.
So there's shock, there's trauma for those of us that are left when someone young goes unexpectedly, someone loved. So there's a certain amount of shock to the system. Your system's like in trauma right now, and part of that grief is the anger that they're gone. There's anger. And so consciously in your front brain, you're going, oh yes, well, I'm dedicated to being more nice, more kind to everyone. I'm not going to waste a moment. So consciously, you're logically going, yes, of course, I don't want to waste a moment being anything other than kind to people now. But in your whole somatic experience, you're all through every cell of your body and your heart and your soul and your everything else that is you as a human, you're deep in grief, man, carrying a big load of that. And part of that necessarily is anger. Like, no, fuck that. I don't want him gone. Like we had the second half of our lives as brothers together. What the no, man, you know? So it's very understandable. So just be patient, dude. Be kind to yourself first. You know, when you get upset and you notice these emotions, that's okay, dude. You're human. It's a beautiful part of this process. And be gentle with yourself when you lose your temper. Be gentle with yourself. Hey, it's okay, man. I'm grieving hard right now. It's going to be okay. Right. I am becoming a kinder, better person through this experience, but it's early days, man. Fucking give me some time, you know. My brother died on his motorbike when he was 30, 14 years ago. um, you know, and so there's been 14 years of healing, and there's still moments where the freshness of the grief consumes me, you know. So yeah, it's a journey, dude.
Yeah. Feels like a good moment to have a pause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Jem, what do you what do you hope this book, your mission, your message, what do you hope it brings to the world? Like take me into the future, man, where we're heading as a society, what you see amongst the men around you. What does this book do that's so important in the world?
Helps bring, firstly, an inner peace, or at least um, a practice. It gives the practical tools for people, not just men, for people to create a foundation of inner peace, which doesn't mean you're always peacefully. It doesn't mean you're always peaceful inside, but it means that your foundation, your resting place, where you return to, is peaceful. Which then means that we can communicate more effectively with each other. You know, because if I'm living in an internal world of turmoil, so my relationship with self, i.e., my relationship to the past, is still all busy, and there's a lot of static going on. Right, I've still got a lot of trauma or hang-ups, or I'm still not okay with a lot of stuff. It's a very noisy internal world for me. Then I can't clearly see you, or not very clearly at all, because I can only, when I say see you, quote unquote, I mean experience you. I can only experience you through my filtering system, right? Whatever information I get that tells me that you're there, when I can see you, hear you, touch you, you know, experience you, goes through my filtering system. So my projection of John inside my head has to have gone through all of my biases, my lenses, my beliefs, etc. So the less resolved I am with myself, the more tumultuous it is inside me and my relationship with self and life, the murkier my vision of you is, right? Or at least the more distorted it is, because it's distorted through my lenses, which means I can't be in beautiful communication with you. I can't see you. I can only see my version of you, which is all my stuff. So if I can help people implement practices to create inner peace, then we can see each other and the world around us more clearly, and we can communicate way more effectively. We can be in communion way more beautifully. We can be in community, you know, way more beautifully. And then we can really actually take humanity in the right direction. You know, I'm interested at the moment, dude. If you ask me which way is it going to go, I actually don't know. I am naturally optimistic, so I'm going to do everything I can to collaborate and connect with other people to try and tip the scale of humanity in the right direction. But if you were to ask me, are we going to fuck this all up pretty soon? I'd be like, I don't know, man. Jury's out. I'm interested. We might, but I'm going to do everything I can to help it go in the right direction. So my vision of the future would be that we are more peaceful within ourselves and able to communicate more effectively with each other to help things go in the right direction.
I'm going to ask you three questions to wrap us up today, Jem, and you can keep these answers as tight as you want. Um, could be one word if you wish, but
Mm,
whatever feels right to you. And the
mm,
categories are this: you, the man, your family, and your business.
mm,
And um, I'm figuring out how I want to ask this question, but really the spirit of the question is in Front Row Dads, there are six pillars that we focus on. Each of those six, you have two in each of these categories I just laid out. So two of those pillars are for the man. How healthy are you, the human? Then your attention to your family, parenting and marriage, and then your attention to your business, right? The
mm,
success of your business and the legacy that it creates in the world.
mm,
And what I want to ask you is, and maybe you can decide, it's either what's your advice for other men, or it is what are the most important reminders for yourself in each of those categories. So it's and maybe it's the same advice for yourself and advice for other men.
mm,
Um, but I could see how they would be similar and I could see how they would be different. So take
mm,
that where you want, but I want to get your insight in those three categories
mm.
in as few words as you want to articulate it.
For self, in no particular order, mind, body, soul, um, structuring time for each of those. I think as a man, it helps me if I have structure. So dedicated mind practice, whether it's meditation, dedicated body practice, a gym membership or an exercise structure or routine, and then a dedicated spiritual practice, whatever that looks like for you. So structure. For family, for my kids, it's lead by example. I've noticed no matter what I tell my kids to do, that doesn't land. But if I be the man that I hope my boys want to emulate, that's had been way more effective. Did you guys just have Father's Day? We just had Father's Day in Australia. Did you have Father's Day?
June,
We Okay,
June.
so we just had Father's Day this weekend gone. And my 20-year-old who's studying film made a short video of all different images of me and the boys and my partner over the years, and he made this little video for me, and it was really interesting because I got to see how he sees me.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it was through
Yes.
his lens of me,
Wow.
and it was beautiful. I was brought to tears. And then my 18-year-old wrote me this big long card. His love language is words, and he wrote me this big long card, and he said in there, Dad, when you say to me that you're proud of the man I'm becoming, just know that I wouldn't be half the man I am without having you to emulate. And that just, and again, I was crying when I read this card. So as a father, it's what you do, not what you say, so much. And then as a partner, um, holding space for my woman to look after herself as well, like creating space for her to be who she feels to be. And then for my business, like, mission is, purpose and mission is the most important thing for me. I'm very clear about my mission and my purpose, and so my business, which is an expression of me, is very focused in terms of mission and purpose as well. And I think that's the most important thing.
You know, uh, I lied. There's one more question based on what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
And then we're done. But the question is 2 days ago, I started writing the Front Row Dad vision mission statement. Very,
Mm.
very fun to do. Wrote, and then I was like engaging with Chat GPT about it. Hey, read this. What am I missing? It was really cool. I had it interview me. I said, hey, if Simon Sinek were to review this, what would he say? Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really cool. So, in the process of like your framework, your beliefs around conscious communication, early on in our interview, you mentioned vision.
Mm.
Communicating a vision, and
Mm.
this is fresh for me. So, what might I learn from you in regards to conscious communication, specifically on the topic of vision?
Less is more.
Mm,
So being succinct. And the right people will be attracted to your why. Simon Sinek said that in his first TED talk, right? And he said it in a way more corporate way. He was talking about, be clear as your business, be clear on your why. And people buy your why, not your what. Remember that talk from ages ago that kind
Yeah.
of launched him. But I think also being very clear on your own personal why and being able to communicate that clearly. I mean, I've done a lot of thinking about about mission and vision, but purpose. And for me, it's like an onion. I've got different layers. And so at the very core of the onion of my purpose is my own internal sense of what's the meaning to my life? Why am I here? You know, and it's to live wholeheartedly, to give generously, to learn open-mindedly, and to love unconditionally. They're my four pillars. And whenever I need to check back in with myself and am I on mission, I'm checking in with those four things. The next layer out is my family and my loved ones. And that my purpose for my family is to make their lives easier. And they're not always going to be easy. There's necessarily going to be hard stuff. Yeah, you and I both know that. But if I do what I can do to try and make their lives easier, and then there's the business mission, which is to bring in a peace for visionaries. Um, but so there's these different layers. And one more thing on that with the conscious communication. Once you get clear on your mission and your vision, say it out loud often. Say it out loud often. Language is powerful, especially when we put it on vibration and we activate the vocal cords, and there's a certain vibrational quality that goes outward and also inward because you're creating those neural highways. Yeah. Um, and be proud of it, share it, because the right people will be attracted to it.
Jem, thanks for being on the show, man.
Dude, thank you so much for having me on the show. I hope we get to chat again.
Pumped about the book. I hope people go pick up a copy. The Art of
Mm,
Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, Effective
mm.
Personal and Professional Communication Skills. It's on Amazon.
Yeah,
Found it already. Got a copy myself. So excited
awesome.
to dig in. And thank you, brother, for doing the work that you're doing in the world. We certainly need it. I'm also feeling really happy for your kids to have a dad like you, and a
Ah,
partner to have somebody like you in their lives to hold space for them. Um, Really cool. And thanks for also demonstrating the pause today. Not only did
mm.
you speak of it, but you brought it. You actually brought, I think, the skills that you write about and that you shared. It would be odd if you didn't, but you did, and it
Yeah,
was very congruent and aligned. And so, thank you, man. I hope to drop in with you again soon.
you're welcome, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right.